Question number 4, and this time about requirement related stuff in agile ways of working, user stories, epic, story map. So let's get into it. And looks like this question will need little discussion. So here, first I read the question and the option and share the poll result and talk about my opinion about it. So you are working with a project manager, project owner. So you are a project manager working with a product owner who has been creating user stories for a project. A stakeholder complains that he is unable to see the big picture of the flow of requirement, since the user story only provides a slice of requirement. Which particular tool a product owner can use to address this scenario? So here my role is project manager. I am coaching, mentoring product owner to take care of this stakeholder query. So I have a role to explain him which particular method, tool, artifact can help us in achieving this. So let's look at the option, though it is not at all required to look at the option because we are very clear. Such kind of requirements are usually handled with the help of user story mapping, because it's just directly asking about the definition of it. So from PMP exam perspective, this is an easy question, provided you know which tool is primarily meant for it. So big picture, you can get a super big picture about the future direction of your product with the help of product roadmap. Thankfully, that option is not here. So you can say that it is an overall vision, and the road direction to achieve that vision is in the roadmap. But the flow of user story is the tool which is used as user story mapping. Now I see when I look at the options, the option A talks about using Epic before creating the user story. Option B talks about create a detailed scope statement with, so that user knows about it and later on you can create user stories out of it. Not a great idea. It's a hybrid approach, but not usually used because that's not the problem. Use a user story mapping, which is a right option, and involve the stakeholder in the backlog refinement meeting. Great idea, but not necessary involvement alone gives him the full picture. So I see most of the people have voted for A, using epics. Some of you have voted for C, which is the right answer. But I think this requires little discussion to clarify the difference between epic, user story, and user story mapping. Now, epic is, before you get into refined user story, you just create a folder for user stories, which is an epic. Epic is something which may get disintegrated into multiple user stories. But don't think epic as a well-defined, complete product description, and you create that, and inside it, from that big description, big flow, you create small user stories out of it. Don't think like that. And also, in a given project, you may have a various epics. So even in a user story map, you can have epics participating in user story mapping. So epic from a PMP exam perspective is just a folder or a container which will get elaborated incrementally in the backlog refinement meeting, and you create user stories in an incremental manner out of it. You don't detail out the epic directly, you create user stories and you detail out them incremental manner. So let me share a little more about it, and probably we explore the understanding of user stories and epic. So we have a product backlog. I think most of us have been seeing this particular two-line diagram, the box, and we talk about there could be a fine-grained requirement which is on the top. There could be a less refined requirement which might be somewhere in between and at the bottom. And you can call the requirements which are at the lower stage, which are not yet defined, epics, and the things which are well understood, which are probably ready for getting started, is a user story. So well-refined user stories are expected to come on the top. Now, what is user story mapping then? User story mapping is converting this backlog and visualizing the overall flow of uses. So you may look at a user flow, you may identify a particular role or a user and see how this user is going to interact with the product, what kind of step user is going to take. So for example, if you want to purchase from the e-commerce website, you probably log in, you search the product. So you can say search is the step, you identify the right product, you pay for it, and then you get it shipped. So you may have these steps. So we identify what all steps this product will have for that particular user. And then we distribute the user stories from here and create a kind of a two-dimensional map. So it's like a table. For each step, we are identifying the user stories, which are coming from here only. And sometimes we use this technique to identify the user stories as well. We put them into a flow process. So by looking at it, we get an understanding. This is how we are going to meet the user goal. This is how the user is going to meet the user goal by the way of collecting various, getting things implemented in various user stories. There could be some stories which might be at a higher level. So Epic can also participate at some flow at some stages. After that, user story mapping is also used for prioritization purpose. We can prioritize for each step and identify which all stories we need to do first. And then user story mapping further can be also used to identify the scope of the first and second releases. You can identify that, okay, these are the stories we will make in our first release, and this is how we move forward. So user story mapping is a tool which can be used for visualizing the complete flow. It can be used for discovering the user story, because when we visualize the flow, we can also identify the missing pieces in the form of user stories. It can also help us in prioritizing so that we can create a first level of product fast. And it can also be used as an extension of prioritizing. It can also be used to create a scope of your first or second release of your product. So coming back to the question where we started for. So in this particular case, the idea is, as a stakeholder, I want to get the whole flow, and the option C, which is talking about user story mapping, is the best option here. So if you are not yet subscribed to our channel or LinkedIn, I think you should probably do it if you like watching these 4 options kind of polls and the discussions which we do on our YouTube channel.